Hi, I'm Kamali, taking you through the stories people are talking about and sharing around the world on NewsFeed today. The young journalist in South Africa working to reduce the country's gun crime. The new novel by actor Sean Penn has the internet screaming, "Stay in your lane." An American starts a business selling chai in the US, and Indian Twitter is none too pleased. And lazy cat, a cheetah, begs for a lift while a man is trying to enjoy his safari in Tanzania. All right, well, top of our newsfeed, the young journalists in South Africa doing all they can to reduce gun violence. Now, you may remember this video from a couple of weeks back of a shootout following a robbery. We were shocked, but it seems that these kind of acts are depressingly regular in South Africa. This happened on the same street as a nursery school. And kids in South African schools are being taught how to handle the grief of either witnessing or losing someone to gun violence. So the Children's Radio Foundation began this campaign.
Today we're talking about all things gun violence. We're joined by your very favorite Bigger Than Life member, who is Monica, and she's going to tell us about her experience with gun violence, and she's going to share it with you all.
My dad was killed, and it's because of gun violence. I felt so angry, sad. It's a feeling I can't explain because he was not just a person I met at the street and then I was like, hi, and then tomorrow someone tells me that, oh, the person you greeted yesterday got shot. This person was my dad.
He's that's what we're talking about today, gender-based violence, gun violence, grabbing a moment from the past and sharing that moment with us.
I was waiting at home for my dad because it was my birthday, obviously. And then they called my mom to rush at the hospital at Sunning Hill. They told us that my dad passed on.
Kana ko respecta papa Monica Rosonji ke na kwa Rosonji ba kena lapeng. Papa Monica saka fitla. It's easy gore enka go control. But Rosna ekan enka ka so control so much. It's easy for you to solve the problems to be le jona le somebody.
Gun violence in Alexandra is a very serious issue that we have, but due to the society in which we live in and the day and age, we tend to turn a blind eye towards the matter and act as if it's not happening.
All right, well, let's talk now to Marianne Nobel and Monica Mobame, who made that video and work at the radio station. Okay, girls, first of all, Marianne, to you, why is it so important to be involved in this kind of campaign?
I feel like a lot of young people don't get the chance to have their voices heard. And so because I work on a platform where we work with Voices Radio, being able to amplify their voices is such a big deal to me. Many people don't think certain issues such as gun violence affect young people. And so me being able to amplify that, put it out there, is very important.
Monica, for you, the chance to be able to have your voice heard, the chance for young people to see someone like themselves on that kind of platform, how do you think that helps get the message across that you're trying to send?
It helps young people to have like the great knowledge to watch themselves, and also if you once experienced gun violence and you talk about it, I think it helps you heal, and yeah, it makes you leave all the problems you have, and yeah.
As a young journalist, how do you think you can take this kind of campaign forward?
Okay, so not everyone listens to radio all the time, or maybe when I'm on air. So I know with my team of people, we actually have a program where we have outreaches, where we literally go out to the community and let them know what it is we work with. Right now, last week actually, we had an outreach about gun violence where we were handing out pamphlets and we were labeling certain places as gun-free zones. So your churches, your schools, your clinics, where people know that if I'm here, I can feel safe. I can feel like I'm not going to have a gun. We obviously did talk to the people there, and they allowed us to label those places as gun-free zones.
Are people fearful to go out? Do people feel the need to arm themselves? Is there any sense of that, of young people feeling the need to carry some kind of weapon to make sure they can protect themselves should the worst happen?
We've actually spoken about that in one of our shows, how many people say they have a gun because they feel like they need to protect themselves. But we work with an organization called Gun Free SA, and so they come with the stats and the numbers of how using guns in certain ways and certain reasons, they come to us with all that information. And one of the biggest facts that stood out to me is that you're 4 times more likely to be affected by your own gun, get injured by your own gun, than you are to actually use it to protect yourself. And last week, when we did have our outreach, I mentioned this to one of the adults who told me he had a gun because he felt like he needed to protect himself. And when I explained that to him, he found it very surprising because looking at situations, he has said that every time he's taken out his gun, it's not like he's been able to take it out and then shoot the next person and it's over. It's always been a power struggle. So I think the fact that people don't know all this information is the biggest problem.
And now, I know you guys are outreaching, you're speaking to the community, you've got your show. What about politics? Are you speaking to those in power who can actually make some kind of difference?
The main aim of our partnership with Gun Free SA is to actually get stricter gun laws, because it's come to our attention that countries with stricter gun laws don't experience as much gun violence. So later on, so all of these outreaches, all of these radio shows, it's a 2-year program. The main aim is to eventually go to Parliament and prove to them, like we're going to have our story straight, our numbers and everything, and prove to them that, listen, this is how people feel about guns, these are the numbers behind guns, and so having stricter gun laws could really help. Because in South Africa, you can purchase a gun at the age of 21.
Question to you, Monica. Of course, you've had the trauma of having to actually deal with this properly in your family, and I feel for you for that. What kind of message do you want to try and send to politicians?
I think we should reduce firearms access to the youth and people who are at risk at hurting themselves or hurting each other, and have an organization as young people and have conversation and just give out ideas on what we can do and what not to do.
All right, 2 very inspirational young women. Let's have a look at what else is trending on social media. Laura Ingraham, the host of a show called The Ingraham Angle on Fox News, has apologised, kind of, for accusing a teenager who went to the school where there was a mass shooting last month of whining. And due to David Hogg challenging her comments on Twitter, some companies say they will no longer run their ads during her show. Well, David Hogg had done an interview where he said he'd been rejected from 4 colleges. Laura Ingraham then tweeted that he was whining. She said that, in the spirit of the Holy Week, being Easter, she apologises for the upset caused by her words. Yeah, I know those kind of apologies. Sorry my words upset you, not sorry I said the words. A court in California has ruled that coffee companies have to put a cancer warning on their products. A bunch of decaf, probably tea-drinking Buzz Killingtons have been fighting this for 8 years, and they've finally got a judge to rule in their favour. When coffee beans are roasted, they produce a carcinogen called acrylamide, and the coffee companies were unable to prove that this compound didn't cause harm. Well, The Weeknd has dropped a new album just in time for... It's called Dear Melancholy, and I listened to it this morning, and as the name suggests, it's not exactly feel-good Friday tunes. But if you're going through a breakup or are contemplating one, this album will make your weekend. Now, people from some African countries are in Israel seeking asylum on humanitarian grounds. The government of Israel has offered them a choice: deportation or jail. Now, Tamina has been thinking about their plight and has this take on the issue.
Is Israel a racist country? As Black Lives Matter resonates around the world, where is the outrage for black lives in Israel? Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu plans to deport 40,000 African refugees, mainly from Eritrea and Sudan, to another country in Africa or back home. He calls them illegal infiltrators, criminals, economic opportunists, and says they're worse than terrorists.
הצפה של מסתננים בלתי חוקיים מאפריקה.
Even some rabbis have joined in the racist rhetoric, comparing African people to monkeys.
כושי מברכים, אלא צריך שיהיה כושי שאבא שלו ואימא שלו לבנים. איפה אתה תדע? אם אתה יודע, תופעה שאתה יודע, ואז יצא להם בן קוף, יצא להם בן ככה.
These are asylum seekers we're talking about. A report by the UN has found that people in Eritrea face an authoritarian government, rape, torture, forced labour and enslavement. Aren't these good enough reasons to flee a country? And we can't ignore the situation in Sudan. It's even featured on lists like this. As if the life of these asylum seekers isn't hard enough. Now they're being persecuted for trying to seek refuge in Israel, the same country that's supposed to be a democratic nation.
What the people of Israel want is for the people of the Middle East to have what you have in America, what we have in Israel, democracy.
Israel was one of the first of 145 nations to sign the UN Convention on Refugees, which obligates Israel to help those in life-threatening situations. You'd think after what happened to Jewish people during the Holocaust that the Israeli government would have some sort of compassion for these African asylum seekers. Instead, many have been locked up in prisons, placed in ghettos in impoverished parts of Tel Aviv and denied work.
Now, the phrase "stay in your lane" comes to mind with this next item. The actor and activist Sean Penn has written a novel and the internet has been savage. Now, he's a fine actor. I loved him as Davy Kleinfeld in Carlito's Way, but his writing, I don't know, man. We've got another great actor, Stavroula Logothetis, to read some of Penn's prose, and brace yourselves.
Page 12. Bob's boyhood essence set him up for a separation from time, synergy, and social mores, leading him to acts of indelicacy, wounding words, and woeful whimsy that he himself would come to dread. Page 94. Silly questions of cherries saved served to sever any last impression Bob might have had of Spurley as a serious citizen. Page 125. There is pride to be had where the prejudicial is practiced with precision in the trenchant triage of tactile terminations. Page 142. His dream's desert daylight diffusion dictated disturbances in the void of a visual detail.
Strugg indeed. Now, chai, the delicious Indian drink, is now being sold by the bucket load in the United States. And some people aren't happy because the million-dollar business Bhakti Chai was started by a white woman.
Saw this opportunity to bring my creation, my recipe to market and have people feel what it feels like to have India in a cup. Just started making my own chai for friends, and it was spicy and it was fresh and it had a lot of ginger.
Now, the internet has spent hours analysing Donald Trump's handshake, but let's take a look now at how he says goodbye. This is him saying bye-bye to his aide Hope Hicks, who quit last month. For some reason, the man who became more famous due to a show where he fired and hired people likes to be filmed doing much the same now. He's one of the most powerful men on the planet. And they may be the fastest things on four legs, but that doesn't mean a cheetah is above trying to beg a lift. This one in the Serengeti first sits on the hood and checks to make sure there's room. There's a little tap on the windscreen, and then he gets in. As you can see, there's plenty of room, but to the cheetah's annoyance, they don't start the engine. They just sit there taking a selfie video. Well, this goes on for 10 minutes, apparently, and the lucky, slightly scared-looking guy who got the video is called Britton Hayes. That's all from the NewsFeed team for the entire week. Do reach out to me with your questions, comments, complaints and suggestions. I'm at Kamali Melbourne. We're on Twitter, YouTube and Facebook. Follow, subscribe and add. See you on Monday.